Hello and welcome techies. I am Sambhav here. This is the fourth part of data type. In the previous videos, we have already discussed about what is data type, what is the significance, and also we have discussed in detail about Boolean data types, numeric data types, integer data type, floating point, serial, and so many other practical sessions. In case you have not watched my previous videos on SQL, please go ahead and check them out. I will attach the link in the description for you. In today's session, we are going to talk about mostly about character data type, right? We will talk about nature of character data type, how does char and varchar data types differ, and what is the nature of their data storage. We will also talk about typecasting, what happens when a char data type column is typecasted to varchar or a varchar data type column is typecasted to char. We will understand all these things with the practical session. So as I said in the previous videos, we have already talked about Boolean data type and numeric data type in detail with practical sessions. In case you have any questions from my previous videos, please feel free to post your questions in the comment section. Today we are going to cover in detail about character data type. Now the moment we talk about character data type, the first and the foremost thing we should pop up in our mind is what is actually a character data type. When we talk about character data type, it is nothing but storing string values. Whenever we talk about any type of character data type, right, we are mostly talking about storing the string values. String values. Now, what is the string values? What are the different forms of string values? So, your string values can be alphabets from A to B in lowercase or uppercase. It can be numbers as well. That means if you want, you can store your numbers also as string values. You can store alphanumeric values, which is nothing but your combination of numbers and alphabet, right? So you can store your alphanumeric values as well. You can also store special characters. Let's say special characters such as underscore, and symbol, percent symbol. All these special characters can also be stored into your character column. So character column will help us to store all these types of values, whether it is alphabets, it is numbers. If you want, you can store them as numbers, but it is not advisable. You can also store alphanumeric values, which is nothing but combination of numbers and alphabets. Then you can also store values with, I mean, if your data contains any special characters such as underscore, ampersand, percentage, pipe, and so on and so forth. So that is the main purpose or use of your character data type. Now, in order to simplify the study of character data type, SQL has provided us different types of data for character data type. Let us have a look at it. So if we talk about character data type, mainly there are three types of character data types: character n, character varying n, and text. These three data types, they can also be defined or denoted as char n. Character can be denoted as char n, character varying can be denoted as varchar n, and text can also be denoted as text itself, right? So these are nothing but the notations. But they have different properties. So let me bring this over here and explain it to you. So when we talk about the first data type, which is nothing but your character data type, which is nothing but char n. Now this n indicates the number of characters. It indicates number of characters and not bytes. Please remember. It means if I specify char 3, let's say for example I say char 3, right? It means I am defining three characters. This defines three characters and not bytes. It does not indicates n does not indicates number of bytes. So what does character stores? It stores a fixed length of value and blank spaces are padded. We'll talk about this in detail, right? I will explain it to you each and everything about this. Then we have character varying n, which is nothing but denoted as varchar n as well. which is of variable length with limit. Now what is the meaning of variable length with limit? We will see that shortly. Now again here also n is nothing but your number of characters. That means if I say I'm defining a column with a varchar 10, assume for example, it means I am saying 10 characters, not 10 bytes or 10 bits. 10 does not indicate number of bits or bytes, it indicates number of characters, right? Then the third type is text. Text is very robust. The same notations is used for text, and it is of variable unlimited length. Now let us try to understand what each one of them are doing here, right? We will talk about each one of the data type in detail, right? So here, as I mentioned, n denotes the number of strings and not bytes. N indicates number of strings and not bytes for both char and varchar n. If inserted more than n strings, it will throw error. What is the meaning? For example, let's say for char n example, if suppose I am specifying char 5. Now if I insert more than 5 characters, definitely SQL is going to throw error. Similarly for varchar, if I am throwing more than let's say varchar 5, and if I am trying to insert more than 5 characters, then definitely it is going to throw error, right? If the excessive extra characters are spaces, if excessive extra spaces characters are spaces, then extra spaces are truncated, adjusted within the defined size for both char and varchar. Now let us understand this little bit more in detail. Right? Now suppose I am creating two column. Let's say the first column is name. Assume the first column is name, and the second column, let's say, is company, right? Now I am saying name to be as a char data type, and I am specifying 5 here. Whereas company, assume, is a varchar data type, and I am defining varchar to be as 10, just for an example. Now suppose whenever I am trying to insert some values here, there are few things which SQL will know about this column. First, the column name is name. Now the name column will store value which are of character data type. That means whatever value you store in this particular column, they all will be treated as character data type. Second, SQL will also define the number of characters which can be stored inside this column. That means we are saying char 5 means each of the row which you are going to insert, it can have maximum 5 characters. Now let us take the first example. Assume I am trying to insert here A, and A, right? 3 A's I have inserted. But here I have defined 5. Char 5 means what? It will accept these 3, and for the remaining 2 characters, it will leave it as a blank. But it will consume these 2 blank spaces as well. Whereas when it comes to varchar, and suppose in varchar I am defining X, Y, and Z. Now here, even though I have inserted only 3 characters, but the length for varchar is 10. Now the moment I define varchar 10 for company, now what SQL will do is it will set up some rules for this company column. The first rule which it will set up is that all the values which is going to be stored in this particular column will be of varchar type, whose maximum length is 10. So this 10 or 5 which you are seeing, it defines the maximum length. Maximum length means maximum number of characters, right? Now here, even though varchar 10 is defined, but I am only storing 3. So what will happen? Is it going to consume all the 10 spaces? And for the remaining, is it going to pad up the space with blank spaces? Definitely no. Here SQL will only consume this much space. But whereas in character, if you are using 3 characters only, but you have defined the length to be as 5, it will consume all the 5 spaces. Remaining characters, if you have not inserted, let's say in this case you have inserted only 3 but not 2, so it will pad this space with, it will utilize this space with a blank space, right? That is why character is called as of fixed length. That means once you define the length, even if you define less number of characters, SQL will consume that space. If you have inserted less number of characters than the defined length, if you have inserted less number of characters than the defined length, then the remaining values will be parked with space. But that does not happen with varchar. That is why varchar is called as variable character with length. Now, suppose I am trying to insert more than 5 values. Suppose A, 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 and A. So you see I am trying to insert 6 values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? Now the moment you insert more characters than the defined length, SQL will start throwing error. The moment you insert more number of characters than the defined length, SQL will definitely throw error. And this is also applicable for varchar as well. It is also applicable for varchar. That means if you have defined 10, but if you're trying to insert more than 10 characters, then SQL will definitely throw an error. Because the moment you create a table with this data type char and 5, that means you are telling SQL to fix the length of all the values, for the entire value for a particular row, not more than 5. Similarly here, not more than 10. That is the reason why character is called as fixed length, right? Variable length. Fixed length is for character, and variable length is for varchar. Blank space padded, that is what I explained here. This is nothing but your blank space. That means if you have inserted less number of characters than the defined length, then those characters will be consumed with blank space. In fact, we are going to see all these things in our practical session as well, right? So that is what I am trying to explain here. If the excessive or extra characters are spaces, then extra spaces are truncated. Now let us talk about this particular point. Now suppose in this example, suppose I am trying to insert values like A, B, and C. These are the actual 3 characters, but while inserting, I am inserting space. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Assume that these are indicating spaces. So total how many characters I am inserting? 1, 2, 3, then 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So totally I am inserting 8 characters, right? But here I have defined only 5. Just now we have seen that if we are trying to insert more number of characters than the defined length, then SQL will throw error. What will happen in this scenario when we are trying to insert more number of characters? More number of characters means I am counting spaces as well, right? More number of characters, but the extra characters are only space. The extra characters are only spaces. In that situation, what SQL will do is, SQL is intelligent enough to consume the 5 space, and it will store the value, and remaining it will ignore. It will not throw error. It will not throw error means if you are trying to insert value, right, in a char, in this case limit 5, that means character 5, and if your extra characters are with spaces, let's say for example A, B, C, D, E, right? I have inserted 5 character, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But while inserting, I am still adding some spaces. That means these are extra characters, but they are with spaces. In those situations, SQL is intelligent enough to accept this value, and it will trim out the extra spaces. This concept is exactly same for varchar also. This concept is exactly same for varchar as well. We will see that in our detailed discussion when we are doing all the practicals, right? Now, talking little bit more in detail about char n. So you can, while creating the table, you can use character n or char n, both is fine. Now, as I mentioned earlier, char n, here n indicates n is nothing but the length, that is char 5 will store up to 5 characters. N denotes the number of characters and not the bits and bytes. If inserted less than 5, in this case, if you are inserting less than 5 characters, which we have discussed here, the first example which I explained, right? SQL pads the rest of the column with space. That means it will include spaces. It will fill 5. That means it is like mandatory. It has to insert 5 values, right? Default value is 1. Means suppose if you are creating a table with a char data type and you do not define the number of characters. Let's say for example I am just saying char, right? Assume there is another column called as product, right? Let's say product, and I am only defining char and I'm not defining the length, how many characters I want to insert. If you leave it like this, then the default value is 1. That means this is equivalent to character 1. This is equivalent to character 1. That means the default value is 1 if you are not defining the number of characters or the n value explicitly, right? Now let's talk about varchar or character varying n type. So again, n is same, right? We have discussed it's a number of characters and not the bits and bytes. And if I write character 10, that means it is going to store up to 10 characters. If you are inserting less than 10 characters, then SQL does not pad the rest of the column with space. It will not pad, it will exactly consume the same space, what I explained here. So here if I'm inserting only X, Y, Z, then it will consume these 3 and it will not consume the rest of the 7 characters with space. It won't do that. That is why it is called as a varchar, right? Thus it is called as character varying. It behaves as text type when n is not defined. Means what? Let's say for example, the way I explained this one, char with a default value. Now suppose there is another column. Let's say this time the column name is item. Assume item is a column name. And in that item, if I am defining the data type to be as varchar, right? But now I'm not defining the value of n. That means how many character it is going to store. So what is going to happen here? If I do not define the number of characters for varchar, then what will happen is this will show any number of characters. This will show any number of characters. Any number of characters will be indicated. Means it can accept character value of any length. So this is a major difference between char, or you can say this is one of the difference between char and varchar. If char is not defined with any length, right, then the default value is 1, right? That means it will accept only one character. Whereas varchar, if a column is defined as a varchar data type and if no length is defined, then it will accept any number of characters. That means here the default value is not 1. The default value is not 1. Please be mindful about this, right? It actually starts behaving like text. It actually starts behaving like text data type. What is a text data type? We have already seen. Text data type, variable unlimited length. That means when you are defining a column with a varchar data type and you are not defining the number of characters, that means any number of characters you can insert and SQL will accept it. Any number of characters you can insert and SQL will accept it, right? Now let us do some practical examples here. So I have created a table here for us. So I'm creating a table called as char table 1 and I have created these columns. So serial number, character column, varchar column, first name, last name, product description. Now I am trying to cover all the possibilities of defining the data type, right? So serial number is a serial data type, which we have already discussed in our previous videos. In case you have not watched them, please go ahead and check them out. Second one is char column. So here I'm defining it as char. Now this char which I'm defining, it is of default type. Now let me explain this to you. So let's say, for example, let me delete this. Sorry. And let me paste my query over here, right? Let me paste my query over here. Now, if you look at this particular query, what am I doing here? I am actually defining different types of values. So here char, which I am defining, let me choose another color. Here the char which I am defining, I have defined it without length, So this will boil down to the default value of 1. That means here this is equivalent to char 1. That is the nature of PostgreSQL. That means if you do not define the number of characters or length, the default value is 1. Here varchar also I have defined without length. I have defined varchar data type without any length. So what will happen? It will accept any number of character. Here the default value is not 1. Please remember that. The next column which I have created is first name, and I have said char 5. That means it can accept maximum 5 characters. Last name, again it is 10 characters. And the last column which I have created, product description, which is of text type. So text type is nothing but it is of variable unlimited length. That means it will accept variable unlimited number. Any number of characters can be inserted here. And also you will notice, which I have explained here, is so since there is no data type defined for varchar, there is no length, sorry, not data type, no length defined for varchar. So now the varchar will also start behaving like text itself because it is of variable length. Any number of characters can be inserted. Now, let me execute this piece of query and see what happens. So my table has created, right? You know that we have created all this table in a previous video. Let me refresh the table. And now you will see we have a char table, right? The char table has got the following columns, which we have created just now, right? Now let me show you the table. Of course, the table does not have any data because we have not stored anything into it. But now when I am inserting it, you would notice that serial number is integer, which I have explained why serial number becomes serial data type becomes integer in the last video. Then char call, you see by default here it has taken 1. By default it has taken here 1. Varchar column, which is just a varchar without the length, it is just showing character varying. First name is 5, so it takes character 5. Last name is varchar 10, which it shows, and this is text, so it is just showing us text, right? Now let us insert all correct values. Let me insert all correct values. So I am inserting the value for char call, varchar call, first name, last name, and product description. I don't have to insert it for serial number because that is an auto increment value, so it will automatically populate. So let me execute this. So this will insert 2 rows of data, and let's see that, right? Now you see we have got all the values. So char column has accepted 1 value, right, for both, because we have inserted the same varchar column also. And you will notice for first name, which we have inserted Amit, which is 5 characters, so I am using only 4, so that is fine. If it is less, then there is less characters if you are inserting than the defined length, no problem. Ram, Mohan and all, so everything looks good. So but if you'll notice here, for product description it will accept everything. Product description will accept everything because any number of characters can be inserted. Now let us look into the second scenario. Let us look into our second scenario. The second scenario says case when more number of strings are inserted than defined. More number of characters are inserted than defined. So here you will notice I am trying to insert ABC for my char call, whose length is 1 by default, right? You remember while creating the table we have not defined any length for char column, right? So by default it is 1, but at the time of inserting the values I am trying to insert 3. Same thing you will notice for your first name. The first name, the maximum length is 5 characters, but here I am trying to insert yellow, which contains 6 characters. Now let me execute this piece of query and let's see what happens. So definitely SQL is throwing an error. It says value too long for type character 1. type character 1, which is nothing but for your first column, char column. Now let me fix this. Let me fix this, and I'm trying to insert the value. Now definitely it should throw an error for yellow also, because that is more than 5 character. Let's see that. Yes, it is showing value too long for type character 5, right? So it will throw error. So always remember, if you are trying to insert values in a table or for a column with more than defined number of characters, it is definitely going to throw error, whether it is a char column or a varchar column. Now let's go to the third use case. Let's go to the third use case. The third use case is about space. Values inserted with correct spaces. Values inserted with correct spaces. Now before I jump into that, let me show you something. Let me show you something. Let me execute this piece of query. So you know that 2 rows have been inserted. Now let me copy this value. Let me copy this 4 value. Let me copy this value here, right? And let me show you how the data actually looks like. How the data actually looks like. Now, you know that Amit is the first name and Kumar is the second name. Ram is the first name and Mohan is the last name, right? For the first name, the number of character defined is 5. The number of character defined is 5. And for the varchar last name, the number of character defined is 10. But here I am inserting only 4 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Amit. But for the 5th character, you see a space has been included. A space has been included. That is the nature of character column. Similarly, in the second row, if you see, I have only inserted 3 values, which is Ram, 3 values. But for the remaining 2 characters, SQL has by default inserted space. That is character 5. The reason is because of character 5. That is why this is called as a fixed length data type. This is of fixed length. The nature is fixed length. If you define 5, the 5 spaces will be consumed. But if you look at the last name, which is character varying, even though the character varying length is 10, and I am only inserting 5 values, 5 characters here, but it will not include spaces. It will not include spaces. In fact, as and when the value changes, the length of this changes, it will only utilize those many characters, those many spaces. It will not pad the remaining space, space with a blank space, right? That is why it is called as variable length. This is variable length. So remember, this is a fixed length. This is of variable length. Now, let's get into another example where I'm trying to store the value with space. I'm trying to store the value with space. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to store Tom 3 characters, and I have added 2 space, 1 space, 2 space. That makes it 5. Now let us see how SQL behaves with that. White, I have 5 characters here, and remaining I have added space. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because the total length is 10. So I'm inserting 5 spaces. Now here also you see in text data type, I have added this many values, but there are a lot of spaces I have added. So what happens when we store a value or when we insert values with spaces for the columns defined as character data type? So let me execute this and let's have a look at the result. Let's have a look at the result. Now, here when you look at the table from the top, it does not have any problem, right? Now let me copy these 3 pieces of value. Let me copy these 3 pieces of value here, right? Now, Tom, you see, I have inserted with 2 space, so it has accepted those 2 space. It has accepted those 2 space because the maximum length is 5. Now, here, if you notice white, in white, I have explicitly added 5 space, so SQL has included those 5 spaces. SQL has included those 5 spaces. That means if you are including spaces while inserting the values in your table, those spaces will be retained as it is, right? Let's say similarly for electronics, you see there are a lot of spaces which has been included, right? So here I have counted the number of spaces. based on the total length defined for the column, and I have inserted the values. Now then the question is, what if we insert more number of spaces? What if we insert more number of spaces than the defined length? Let's have a look at it. So in this example, you would see that I am inserting a lot of space for the first one, that means 1, right? Integer, character column whose default length is 1. For varchar column also I am inserting a lot of spaces. You see, for Tom also I am inserting a lot of space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces. That means for Tom 10, whose limit is only 5. So 3 characters plus 7 space makes it 10. Similarly for White, you see, we have 5 characters and then I have inserted a lot of space. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So these many spaces I have added and made it a total length of 17. Now let us see what happens when we insert these values. This will give us a very interesting result. Now let me execute this and let me show you the data. Now if you look at the data, okay, it is already here. Let me delete this. Now if you look at the data, let me copy this piece. Oops, my bad. Now let us see what has happened, how SQL has inserted that value, right? Let me select all of them. Let me copy all of these values and let me paste it here so that we will be able to understand what has happened. Now let us look at each of the value which we have inserted. Let's look at each of the values which we have inserted. The first value is P. P we have inserted with lots of spaces, right? But by default that this column length is defined as 1. So when you're adding extra spaces, SQL and if those spaces are more than the defined length of the column, SQL will trim those spaces out and it will store the value, right? So if it is 1, it will accept that and the remaining values were spaces, so they will be trimmed out. Now talking about the second column, varchar, you see it has included all the spaces because varchar, when you do not define the length explicitly, that means it can accept any number of characters, Talking about Tom, which is the first name, right? Talking about Tom, which is first name, which has only 5 characters. But while inserting, I have inserted so many spaces, right? Like 6, 7 space, I have made it 10. So what SQL is doing is, it is only including 2 space, which is the limit of it, that particular column. So it will include those 2 spaces and it will trim out or it will cut down the rest of the spaces and will store the value. The same thing applies for varchar column also. So here you see I have inserted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spaces. But while storing, it has only added 5 spaces. How? 5 characters plus 5 space makes it 10. So when you are inserting the value with extra spaces than the defined length, then SQL will trim out the rest of the additional space and it will store that particular value, right? Now let's look into our next case. Case 5. SQL pads up the space for character column and not for varchar column. What does it mean? I have already explained this to you earlier. This is nothing but the same thing which I have explained here in the first line. That means if you are inserting less number of characters, so for character column, this space, in order to accommodate 5 characters, a space will be added. Same thing is for Ram, which is a first name, but not for varchar. It will store the exact number of values. This we have already discussed, right? Let's look at our next case. This case talks about null values. Means, can I store a null value in my character data type? Of course you can. Let us execute this and see the result. And let me pull up the result. Let me pull up the data from the table, and you see it has accepted null values. It can accept null values for any column. It can accept null value for char column, varchar column, first name column, last name column, and product description. All the data type accepts null value, right? So I hope char, varchar, this is completely clear. The text data type is completely clear. All those things you should remember. Now, let's talk a little bit more about typecasting. Typecasting is also important. Now, what is the meaning of typecasting? The meaning of typecasting is very simple. Let's assume that I have a table. Let me create a table, small table for our example. And here, suppose I have created two columns. The first column is nothing but name. Assume it is name, right? And here I have defined the length as char 5, right? Second column, again I am taking it as product, right? And here I have defined it as varchar, let's assume 10, right? Now suppose I change the data type to one to another. Let's say for example name, which is initially a character column. If I change it to a varchar column, what will happen? Similarly, if product is nothing but a varchar column, what will happen if I change it to character column? What is the impact on interchanging or typecasting the data type? Let us have a look at it, right? If one is typecasted to another, then the overall length of the value will be truncated to n characters without raising an error. A very, very important point. I will explain this to you in detail. From char to varchar, spaces are adjusted. So now you know the nature of storage for char and varchar is different. That means if it has got less number of characters, if you're inserting less number of characters than the defined limit, then especially for for the remaining length, it will include spaces, but it does not do for varchar, right? Let us understand, right? So we have this table, right? We have already seen this table. I'm just showing you this table, the same table, right? Now what I'm trying to do here is I am trying to convert the data type of first name, which is of char, to varchar, and last name, which is a char, to varchar. Now let me do one thing. Let me just pull up two columns for you, right? So let's say select, and I'm giving first underscore name, and I'm saying last underscore name from this char table 1, right? Let me copy this. So what will happen, it will only display the first two columns. These two columns, first name and last name, not the first two columns, I'm sorry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the data type of first name to varchar and last name to char. Let us see what will happen. So you see the same thing I have done here, first name, and then I'm converting the data type of first name to varchar, right? First name to varchar, right? As new first name. Then last name, which is originally, which is a varchar column, I am converting it to char. Now let us see what happens. Now here you will notice that I have defined char 5, but here there are lots of values which is more than 5 characters. Let's say for example, okay, only we have Kingsman, right? So let me execute this and show you. Now you see, when we are inserting the first name, which was initially a character, to varchar, so varchar without any limit, it becomes like, it is just like it will accept any number of characters, unlimited number of characters, right? So it is exactly the same, but you will notice here a slight difference. Okay, let me delete this. We don't need this. I'll copy the same thing again so that we can understand. Now let me copy this and paste it over here, right? So initially the first name was a char column, which I have converted to varchar column. Since the first name contained only 4 characters, so one space was padded up, right? Similarly, Ram, which was initially 3 characters, so for character data type, which had 3 characters, so 2 spaces were padded up. But the moment I convert to varchar, you see the spaces are being removed, because we know the nature of the varchar is, if the number of characters inserted is less than the defined number of character limit, then only those many characters will be stored and the remaining spaces will not be included, right? Whereas character will pads the space, right? Uh, Now let me show you this example. First thing, when we talk about first name to this 5 characters, so what will happen is, let me copy this. Let me copy this and show it to you here. Okay. Yes. Now this is looking fine. Good for comparison. Now you see here, the first name was Kumar, which was character varying 10, right? Which I have converted to char 5, so it has accepted it, no problem. Where from varchar I have translated or typecasted to char. So all these things looks good. But here you see these spaces are trimmed out. These spaces are trimmed out because I have fixed the length of the character. For Dio, which was having only 3 characters, now since it was initially varchar 10, it has accepted only 3 and it did not pads the rest of the length with space. But when it comes to when it is transformed to character, then you see additional 2 spaces are being included, right? Additional 2 spaces are being included. Now look at the Kingsman, which is nothing but the last column. Now look at the Kingsman, which is nothing but the last column. You will see here Kingsman had so many characters, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, but since while typecasting I have only defined 5, it has accepted that only 5 characters and it has rejected MEN 3 characters. Yes or no? So you must be very mindful about this transformation. If your length is less, do not expect SQL to throw an error. If you are typecasting from varchar to char or char to varchar, and if you defined a smaller length, while typecasting, SQL will not throw error. It will accept the number of characters which you have defined while typecasting, and it will perform the operation without throwing any error. You must be very much mindful about it. Now, talking about the last data type, which is text data type. So text data type we have already seen, it is a variable and it can accept any number of characters. Unlimited. It can accept unlimited number of characters. It can store characters of unlimited length. Now sometimes it is said, okay, even if it is unlimited, what do you think is the maximum length it or maximum number of characters it can accept, right? Let me just execute this query once. Let me pull up this query. So right, so I'm talking about, okay, since this is unlimited for text electronics, but how much data can it accept? Maximum up to range of 1 GB. It can accept maximum up to range of 1 GB, right? This now one more thing, one more very important thing. While using the text data type, you are not allowed to define the length. You are not allowed to define a length. That means, see, here I have defined text, of course, but in the prod type column, I'm trying to say text for 20 length. What will happen? Definitely SQL is going to throw error because text data type will not accept a length. See, it will throw error. Type modifier is not allowed for text. The reason is because the moment you tell SQL that a particular column is going to be a text data type, it means the length becomes unlimited. The length becomes unlimited. So after that, if you're trying to define a length, then definitely SQL is going to throw an error, right? Guys, this is also important. In interview, they ask these questions. Generally they will ask these questions. What is the difference between char and varchar and text data type? So now I hope you are clear about all these different data types, and you can also state the difference between char and varchar and text. Let me know the answer for this question in the comment section. I'll be waiting for your answers. Now, in case if you want to continue learning SQL, Python, or data science, machine learning with me, please like and subscribe my channel. Also hit the bell icon to receive notifications for my upcoming video. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day ahead.